Why are you so excited about that? I'm actually saying that you guys were talking the whole time then. But I remember you and I see you, okay? Now, we talked about a lot of stories earlier today, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to re-go over those stories. So if your student came home and they're like, oh, he told this crazy story about this guy that was digging for his son, sorry, I ain't going to talk about that today. But I will tell you that everyone has and then part of their story, okay? Now, I have to tell you guys, for me, I was not someone who was like the most popular person in our school, okay? I was a guy that was kind of like in the middle. I wasn't part of like the really like cool people, but at the same time, I wasn't that person that was like by themselves constantly. I was the guy that was in the middle all the time. And so, I'll never forget, one of the biggest things that we had at our school was homecoming week. Now, if you guys do not know about homecoming week is that week where like everybody gets all excited about the football game at the end of the week, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna take the other team and stick their heads up their butts. And you're like, oh, that's gross, but okay, let's do this. And so, every single time, right before the big game, they always announce who the homecoming king and the homecoming queen are going to be. Now, at my school, only the cool people got to be a part of homecoming royalty to be voted king and queen. So I knew I would never get to be voted king because I'm the guy in the middle. And so I'll never forget one day, I'm sitting in math and I'm like, hey man, 1 + 1, how do you do this? And then all of a sudden the intercom came out. We'll now announce who's on the homecoming court to be voted homecoming king and queen. And I knew they weren't gonna say my name. So I'm sitting there and then all of a sudden I heard Terrence Talley. And I look up from my paper and I'm like, what? And then the person sitting next to me, they're like, that's your name! That's your name! And I was like, that's my name! That's my name! And they go, Terrence, you're gonna be the people's king. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be the people's king. I'm gonna be the people's king. Because they're like, Terrence, because you're not the most popular person in school. I'm like, oh, gee, thanks. But they're like, Terrence, you're gonna represent all us normal people. You're gonna be the people's king. And I was like, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna be the people's king. Now, that next Monday, I don't know what for you guys, but for us, homecoming week, every single day was a different dress-up day. And you know, there's like, one day where it's like, get out of bed and wear your pajamas the school day. Well, the day that they're gonna have the big school assembly to showcase who is on the homecoming court to be voted homecoming king and homecoming queen happened to be 70s day. Or for some of you students in here, it'd be like 90s day. And so, I'll never forget, I woke up that morning, I got like my bell-bottom pants, I got like my big old afro, and I got my open collar shirt that showed my chest, but I didn't have any chest hair, and I stole it off my grandma's wig, and I put it there, and I was like, bam, I'm ready to do this, son. And so I came to school, and when I came to school, everybody's getting into the gym to see this big school assembly. And so we're about to get in, and then there was a guy that was stopping people as they were getting in, and he was stopping everybody that was on the homecoming court. And he's like, hey, all right, this is what we're gonna do. You guys are gonna line up, they're gonna call your name out there, and all you gotta do is go to this spot, wave, and go sit down. I was like, all right, cool. And he goes, and we're gonna do this in alphabetical order. I'm like, hey man, hold up. Why we always have to do things in alphabetical order? My name is Terrence Talley, so that means I am always last to do everything. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna use this time to think of a way to get people to remember my name. So when it came time to vote for homecoming king, they knew they needed to vote for Terrence Talley. And so I'm sitting there, they're calling people's names out there, and I'm trying to think, okay, Terrence, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And then all of a sudden, it hit me. All of a sudden, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it was just like in the movies, you know how everything starts to slow down, and then all of a sudden, in the movie, the guy starts to go in slow motion, and it's like, do-do-do-do-do-do, and the guy that was letting people in, his eyes caught eyes with mine, and it was like he could read my mind. He knew exactly what I was going to do, and he was like, do-do-do-do-do-do, and I was like, do-do-do-do-do, And the next thing I knew, I heard, Terrence Lee! Everybody in the gym stood up, everybody's clapping. I go out there, I do my little 70s dance, and I get to the spot where I'm supposed to stop, give a big wave, and go sit down. But I stopped, turned around, unbuckled my pants, and let them drop. And I am telling you, I have never heard so many people all at once go, oh! And I turned around, picked up my pants, looked to the left, looked to the right, and I was like, yeah! And I sat down. And I thought I had done it. I thought I did the thing that made people to remember my name. So when it came time to vote for Homecoming King, they knew they needed to vote for Terrence Talley. So after the assembly's done, people are coming up to me. They're like, oh my goodness, Terrence, you are crazy. I'm like, that's right, I am crazy. You don't know what I'm gonna do. I am crazy. And so that next day, I'm coming back to school. Everybody's still talking about it. They're like, Terrence, I can't believe you did that. That was ridiculous. I'm like, I know my mama said I was special. I know I'm special. Sat down in my class. Next thing you know, the intercom comes on. Could Terrence Lee please come down to the principal's office? What for? So I go down to the principal's office. She has her door open and she goes, Terrence, can you take a seat? And I said, anything for you, girl. Sat down and she goes, Terrence, do you know why you're here today? And I'm like, I have no idea. And she goes, Terrence, because of your little stunt yesterday, we're gonna take you off the homecoming court. You will not be homecoming king this year. I go, no, you can't do that. I'm supposed to be the people's king. I'm supposed to represent all the normal people. And she goes, I'm sorry, Terrence, you will not be homecoming king this year. And so as I begin to walk out of her office, she said something to me that shook me to my core. And she goes, and Terrence, we're also going to call your mother. I said, whoa, wait a minute. We don't need to get her involved. You need to do something else. Now, you guys have to know that back in the day, nobody had like a cell phone. We didn't have like voicemail. We had an actual physical phone. And it had these things called answer machines. And everybody could hear the messages that were left. And so I'm thinking, you know what? I have to beat my mom home before she gets home from work, so she doesn't listen to that answer machine that's gonna tell her exactly what I did. So I'm like, okay, as soon as school is done, I'm just gonna run home and I'm gonna beat my mom. And as soon as school got down, I'm running home. I'm like, I don't wanna die today! I don't wanna die today! And I walked up to my door, opened up the door, and my mom was standing right there. I looked at my mom, and she looked at me, and I'm like, you so pretty. And she goes, Terrence, you missed your moment. And I'm like, that's it? That's it. You missed your moment. My mom, she loved me. And the whole time, she wanted my story to be different than my dad's story. Now, if you guys were here at the assembly earlier, I talked about how my dad was an alcoholic. So every time you see him, he would like want to cuss you out or fight you. Now, the thing about my dad is he was, even when my parents were divorced, I could always go to his house and he would not be there. And so when we came to my dad's house, it was like, oh, he's not here. We'll just sit here, we'll have fun, we'll party, do all that things. And so my dad, he would always be gone throughout the week. And his house was right across the street from my high school. And every single day for lunch, my friends and I, we would go across the street to my dad's house. We would have this good time. We'd be like, yeah, this is awesome. And sometimes we'd like sit there, we'd watch movies, and I have like this party, and everybody's like, Terrence, I love hanging out at your dad's house. I go, I know he's never here. This is great. And so there was one lunch, and I was like, hey everybody, let's go back to my dad's house. And so as we're going back to my dad's house, all of a sudden, I hear these sirens ringing. And I'm like, what's up? Now you gotta understand, we did not live in like the city or anything. So when you heard sirens, you were like, oh snap, somebody fell off a tree. I don't know why I said tree, that was really random in my head. So I'm walking, and everybody's like, where's that coming from? And I'm like, I have no idea where this is coming from. And as we get closer and closer to my dad's house, I realize it was coming from my dad's house. And I walk up there, all my friends are behind me. I see the police come out of the door and they have my dad in handcuffs. And I'll never forget, he stopped for a second and he looked at me and I could see it in his eyes. I could see the disappointment. I could see the hurt and the pain. And even though I don't know what had happened at that time, I knew he was in a dark place. Come to find out, my dad, he stayed home from work that day because he was going to use that day to take his own life. And he was in that room and he had a gun, and the gun actually slipped out of his hand and it shot down the floor to somebody else's house. I remember thinking, this is part of my and then story. Terrence, you do all these things, and the reason why I did all these things, the reason why I did all these crazy things in school was because I knew this was my legacy. I knew eventually I would end up like this. There would be no and then in a good way. It would all end like this. But you know who is one of the greatest storytellers I have ever heard in my life? He's a DJ, not a storyteller. Pay attention, little boy. One of the greatest storytellers, and he's told numerous stories. He has taught numerous people. Hundreds, thousands, millions of people have been affected by this man's story and how he has told people what is up and what they need to learn for that day. And I am sure every single one of you in this room have heard of this man. And that man is Mr. Rogers, okay? Mr. Rogers is one of the greatest storytellers I've ever seen with my eyes in my life. And matter of fact, there's this one episode. Am I wrong? Has everybody in here heard about Mr. Rogers? Are you kidding me? Really? What are your parents doing? They're failing you. It's Mr. Rogers. Now, if you don't know, a couple of years ago, Tom Hanks played him in a movie. He's America's dad, okay? And if you guys don't know, Mr. Rogers, he had this show, super old show. Even when I was a kid, it was a super old show. And he would have hundreds and hundreds. Matter of fact, he had like 900 episodes. And every single episode, it started the same way. Now, I'm gonna try to pretend that I'm Mr. Rogers for a second, okay? So you guys gotta bear with me, okay? I'm a black man trying to pretend to be a nice white dude. So, you gotta bear with me on this one, okay? I'm gonna show you what happened every single episode, okay? This is what happened. I'm gonna do my best, okay? So the music would come on, and like it would start off with like a toy train coming in, and their camera would go in on this fake house, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, and then all of a sudden you see the door, and this is what he did. The door opens up, and it goes, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?" And I was like, oh snap, this is awesome. This dude, I feel like I'm in his house right now. And matter of fact, he would take his shoes and he would like throw them and like catch them with one hand. You're like, man, Mr. Rogers, he's a ninja. This is awesome. And he would take the shoe and he'd do it. And now every single episode was a very real episode, okay? This is not pretend TV, all right? This wasn't like he had all this CGI. He talked about very real things. He talked about violence. He talked about all these different things. But there's one episode that made me cry, okay? And it was all about a goldfish. I kid you not, this made me cry. Now, this episode, go and Google it, okay? This episode, every single time Mr. Rogers would come in, he would sit down, change his shoes, put on his sweater, and then he would go over and he would feed his fish. But one day he got over there and he bent down and he goes, "Oh, look, he's dead." I'm like, what? I was like, "Mr. Rogers, that's very real right now. Like, why would you say it like that?" And he goes, Kids, he's not swimming or breathing. He's not doing nothing. I was like, man, Mr. Rogers, you could have told a better story than that. And so he's sitting in here and he's being like really honest about how he feels. And he's talking about how sad he is about this goldfish. I've never paid attention to this goldfish in my life, but for this moment, I felt Mr. Rogers. I was like, I am sad too for this goldfish. All of a sudden, he talks about it. And he goes, being sad is okay. That is a natural thing in life. But it's about what do you do when the sad hits you? And it made me think about me. What do I do when the sad hits me? For me, I remember I'm watching my dad, I'm watching him walk out, and I'm saying to myself, this is my legacy, and this is what I have to look forward to. If this is what older Terrence is, then you know what? I don't care about anything. I started to push people away. I started to get angry. I started to act up. Literally, when that happened, I almost got kicked out of school because I pulled my pants down in front of a lot of people. I think that's assault today, but I acted out because I knew I did not have a future. And then something happened that changed everything. My friends from Wonder State, they're gonna come back out here, but there was a lot of and then stories at your guys' school today. And I didn't get to have a lot of time to talk to a lot of different people. But there was one person, and I said this before, if you guys went there, today there was this girl, and I don't know if she's here right now, so if you're here, I'm not gonna point you out. But I remember looking down, and she was just bawling, and she was trying to hide the hurt and the sadness that she had. And I can tell when somebody doesn't know what to do when the sad hits them. There's another guy that was angry. I saw it in his eyes. At first, I thought he was gonna jump on stage and just punch me in my face. But it was something that was said that made him realize he didn't think he was loved. There was, you guys, I talked to 5th through 8th grade, was that right? 5th and 8th grade. There was a 5th grader, made me cry. I had to cover my eyes because I didn't want them to see me crying. But he was a 5th grader. And man, he was crying and all his friends were trying to help him out. And I don't know what his full story was, but I could see when the sad hit him. I talked a lot today about dads and how everyone needs a dad hug. And if you don't know what a dad hug is, dad hug says, I love you and you don't have to do anything for me. Dad hug says, I think you're great and you don't have to be the superstar athlete. You don't have to get straight A's. I just think you're great because you're you. And when the sad hits a lot of us, we pull away and we separate ourselves from everybody else. But no matter who you are in this room, no matter what kind of story you have that makes you sad or mad or hurt or angry, just remember you are not alone. But you belong. You belong and you have an and then in your story too. My friends from Wonder State, they're gonna play a song that they wrote, and they actually played this song in the assembly today. And during this song, you can tell it hit a lot of people in here. And today, I know it's for someone that you have come and everything. Like, I just see it in my eyes. There are bills that are going unpaid. There are like homes that are being broken. Like, I can feel it and I can tell in this room. But I want you to know that whatever you have done, it does not separate you. You belong right here. Because I believe your and then starts today for a lot of you.